expression, which was merely that of an uninterested gentleman waiting patiently for another. It is something of an attainment to watch closely, without betraying undue curiosity. But other of the senses, hearing and smelling for instance, can be keenly engaged while the observer possibly has the appearance of falling asleep. "Now," announced Mr. Carlyle, returning briskly to his friend's chair and drawing on his grey suede gloves. "You are in a particular hurry?" "No," admitted the professional man with the slowness of mild surprise. "Not at all. What do you propose?" "It is very pleasant here," replied Carrados tranquilly. "Very cool and restful with this armoured steel between us and the dust and scurry of the hot July afternoon above. I propose remaining here for a few minutes longer." "Certainly," agreed Mr. Carlyle, taking the nearest chair and eyeing Carrados as though he had a shrewd suspicion of something more than met the ear. "I believe some very interesting people rent safes here. We may encounter a bishop, or a winning jockey, or even a musical comedy actress. Unfortunately, it seems to be rather a slack time." "Two men came down while you were in your cubicle," remarked Carrados casually. "The first took the lift. I imagine that he was a middle-aged, rather portly man. He carried a stick, wore a silk hat, and used spectacles for close sight. The other came by the stairway. I infer that he arrived at the top immediately after the lift had gone. He ran down the steps so that the two were admitted at the same time. But the second man, though the more active of the pair, hung back for a moment in the passage, and the portly one was the first to go to his safe." Mr. Carlyle's knowing look expressed, "Go on, my friend, you are coming to something." But he merely contributed an encouraging, "Yes?" "When you emerged just now, our second man quietly opened the door of his pen a fraction. Doubtless he looked out. Then he closed it as quietly again. You were not his man, Louis." "I am grateful," said Mr. Carlyle expressively. "What next, Max?" "That is all. They are still closeted." Both were silent for a moment. Mr. Carlyle's feeling was one of unconfessed perplexity. So far the incident was utterly trivial in his eyes, but he knew that the trifles which appeared significant to Max had a way of standing out like signposts when the time came to look back over an episode. Carrados's sightless faculties seemed indeed to keep him just a move ahead as the game progressed. "Is there really anything in it, Max?" he asked at length. "Who can say?" replied Carrados. "At least we may as well see them go. Those tin deed boxes now. There is one to each safe, I think." "Yes, so I imagine. The practice is to carry the box to your private lair and there unlock it and do your business. Then you lock it up again and take it back to your safe." "Steady. Our first man," whispered Carrados hurriedly. "Here, look at this with me." He opened a paper, a prospectus which he pulled from his pocket, and they affected to study its contents together. "You were about right, my friend," muttered Mr. Carlyle, pointing to a paragraph of assumed interest. "Hat, stick, and spectacles. He is a clean-shaven, pink-faced old boy. I believe, yes, I know the man by sight. He is a bookmaker in a large way, I am told." "Here comes the other," whispered Carrados. The bookmaker passed across the hall, joined on his way by the manager, whose duty it was to counterlock the safe, and disappeared along one of the passages. The second man sauntered up and down, waiting his turn. Mr. Carlyle reported his movements in an undertone and described him. He was a younger man than the other, of medium height, and passably well dressed in a quiet lounge suit, green alpine hat, and brown shoes. By the time the detective had reached his wavy chestnut hair, large and rather ragged moustache, and sandy freckled complexion, the first man had completed his business and was leaving the place. "It isn't an exchange lay at all events," said Mr. Carlyle. "His inner case is only half the size of the other, and couldn't possibly be substituted." "Come up now," said Carrados, rising. "There is nothing more to be learned."